First came the shock, then came the awe. With half the campaign money of Hillary Clinton, President-elect Donald Trump defied Democrats, his own party, the media, and nearly every prediction. We're calling it the big miss. If the media misread America, there's a reason for the disconnect. In the first post-election poll, Full Measure and Rasmussen Reports asked, how much do you trust the media coverage this election cycle? Over 2/3 said not so much. Only 1/3 of those surveyed said they had any trust in the media's coverage of this election. And that says something about our once trusted institutions, media and polls.
I am officially running for President of the United States.
The big miss started from day one.
I think this is Donald Trump's biggest day, and he will be ignored from henceforth. Actually, I hope he will.
Never before have so many in the media worked so hard to convince the public that a candidate couldn't and shouldn't win.
And we better be ready for the fact that he might be leading the Republican ticket next.
I know you don't believe that, but I want to go on to Matthew Dowd.
It was not close. It was over tonight. Very clear result. Hillary won big time. It was a shutout.
It is unusual, Roger. For the first time in 34 years since USA Today was founded in 1982, the editorial board is taking a position on the presidential race. Specifically, we are urging voters not to support Donald Trump.
Going into election night, the poll analyst site 538 showed Hillary Clinton with a 71% chance of winning. Slate.com was off by more than 500,000 votes in Florida alone and incorrectly predicted Clinton would win the Sunshine State. At 9:18 p.m., the Detroit Free Press incorrectly called Michigan for Hillary Clinton. In the end, Trump won the state and the election, all forcing a massive media mea culpa in the reality hangover the morning after.
We were wrong, okay? The entire punditry industry, the entire polling industry, the entire analyst industry, and I want to use this opportunity to take my fair share of the blame. We were wrong.
How do you explain to them that maybe we didn't see what was going on around us in front of our nose?
I say we didn't see what was going around us in front of our nose.
Frank Sesno teaches ethics and journalism to students at George Washington University.
I say that the story that took place, and this is to the lesson, this is also the lesson of journalism, that the story of the year, in my view, is the story out there in America that neither the media nor the political ruling class saw, heard, got, or suspected.
In a way, looking at the coverage that was going into this and the polls, to me this is almost a modern Dewey defeats Truman moment.
I think that's right. I mean, the polls, the national polls, had Clinton ahead 3 to 5 points.
John Johnson is an expert in statistics from MIT who analyzes polls. He's the author of the book Every Data, about how people misconstrue data. How would you rate the importance of what's happened with polling in this election in terms of looking at the last 20, 30, 40 years?
I think it's very important with respect to the fact that if the polls can't accurately measure turnout, if the polls can't be an accurate gauge on voters' preferences, it's hard to have a lot of confidence in them, and it just leads to people being less trusting and less interested in what they have to say.
And it's clear that in the fallout of campaign 2016, many Americans are less trusting not only of polls, but also of government, media, and so-called experts.
And nobody's an expert on anything, okay? They say they are, but look what happened. So you can't be an expert, you can't predict, because no one knows what the future holds. So don't say this is going to happen when you really don't know.
I think they were listening to themselves. They were listening to other politicals, and I just don't think they were listening to the people, and the people spoke last night.
Do you trust the media?
No, not at all. Not at all, not for a second.
In the end, Trump was elected in spite of much of the media being against him, partly perhaps because of it.
See the dishonest people back there, the media, the totally dishonest. They are so dishonest.
It became a rallying cry among his supporters.
Time now for Media Buzz.
Howard Kurtz is a media critic and host of Media Buzz on Fox News.
This was the worst election for the media in my professional lifetime, and I don't think it's the kind of thing where a month or two from now we all just move on. There is a fundamental level of distrust toward the press, a lot of it from the right, but some of it toward the left, which didn't like the way that we collectively covered Hillary Clinton.
A cache of evidence unearthed in emails published by WikiLeaks also ate into media credibility. They show an unseemly coziness, with news media and political operatives coordinating in ways the public was never meant to see. Clinton campaign staffers called Maggie Haberman at Politico and then the New York Times an ideal friendly journalist. We have had her tee up stories for us before and have never been disappointed. We can do the most shaping by going to Maggie. Politico's Ken Vogel and Glenn Thrush sent story drafts to Democrat officials. Thrush emailed Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta, "Please don't share or tell anyone I did this. Because I have become a hack, I will send you the whole section that pertains to you. Tell me if I effed up anything." And Politico's Mike Allen made an interview pitch for Chelsea Clinton, offering to provide questions precisely agreed upon in advance. No surprises. I would work with you on topics and would start with anything she wants to cover or make news on, quicker than a network hit and reaching an audience you care about with no risk. Clinton officials often discussed placing stories with helpful reporters, such as a friendly at the AP, Matt Lee or Bradley Clapper. When the Atlantic's Mark Ambinder wanted to get his hands on an advance copy of a Clinton speech, a Clinton aide dictated 3 conditions, including, "You in your own voice describe Hillary's speech as muscular." "Got it," replied Ambinder. And then there's CNBC anchor and New York Times contributor John Harwood, who moderated a Republican debate.
Is this a comic book version of a presidential campaign?
It's not a comic book, and it's not a very nicely asked question.
Behind the scenes, Harwood offered compliments to the Clinton camp and solicited editorial input. What should I ask Jeb Bush in Speakeasy interview tomorrow? Cesno, who used to be a reporter at CNN, says some of the dealings clearly cross an ethical line.
When I was covering George Herbert Walker Bush, I was invited to go interview the president, provided I asked him about only one subject. And I said, no, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. I will not agree to that, even though it was a hot subject. I refused to take on that burden and those rules and those constraints.
I think a lot of journalists are saying yes now.
A lot of journalists are saying yes now.
The big miss may reflect growing global skepticism of information provided by once trusted institutions.
The Leave campaign have won, and we're
like we saw after the wrong predictions about the UK vote to exit from the European Union or Brexit.
The punditry, the prediction, the polls, all came up woefully short in this campaign. We don't do better next time. The remaining credibility that the news business has is going to shrink even further.
What does it do to our society when widespread swaths of Americans don't trust the government, the Congress, the media, the polls?
It's deep in our DNA. This country was created on the backs of people who didn't trust central authority. It was Mark Twain who said, suppose I were an imbecile, and suppose I were a member of Congress, but then I repeat myself. We have held our elected leaders in comedic contempt almost since the beginning of the Republic. So we need a little bit of balance here. Yes, it's a corrosive thing when we have so little confidence in our institutions, and it's a serious problem that needs to be addressed. But we should also understand where that comes from, and some of it comes from the founding of the Republic itself.
And a footnote, we at Full Measure try to see things from other views and get outside the media bubble, which is what led me to believe very early on that Trump would not only be the nominee, but would likely be elected.